The irony of recording a video on long rests when I could probably do with my own 8 hours of sleep is not lost on me. Hello, adventurers! I am the Welsh DM, the one Welshman whose accent has decided to take a nap for the rest of the year. D&D, for as long as it's been around, has encountered an issue with the martial caster divide. Throughout editions, people have often commented on this fact, and never more so than in 5th edition. And the oft-mentioned fix for this is to make sure people are putting enough encounters into their adventuring day to ensure that casters go through their resources and bring that balance that the game was designed for. However, I think this is missing the root cause of the issue in the modern use of Dungeons & Dragons and where the narrative storytelling has gone in this era of TTRPGs. And that is with the adventuring day itself and the rest mechanics that underpin it. And since we're all enjoying, hopefully, a restful end to the year to prepare for 2025, now seems like a good chance to discuss a different way of using rests in D&D 5th edition for your modern storytelling at the table. The martial caster divide has existed through every edition of D&D to a lesser extent, and in 5th edition it's still there and perhaps exacerbated by how people view and use the adventuring day. When 5th edition was being designed, D&D was still viewed as this dungeon crawler, monster fighting TTRPG, and the adventuring day and rest mechanics system kind of supports that more than anything. However, in a modern setting, most people are using these sort of games to tell meaningful, narrative-driven stories and are less interested in the monster fighting of it all. And these often take place at a much slower pace in world. The adventuring day was built around having multiple encounters, and when your encounters aren't 3-round combats against multiple enemies, but are instead small exploration challenges or moments of roleplay with NPCs, it means resources aren't being eaten up at the rate that the game expects, which means long rests are devalued. Think back, how many times playing a game of D&D have you actually gone a session without fighting a monster, where instead you've focused on talking to NPCs and then ended up with a long rest and got all of your resources back? That's not to say these stories are wrong, in fact it's the preferred way in which I play, but it does play havoc with the balance of the system. Casters are capable of casting a wide variety of spells that disproportionately affect moments like roleplay and exploration, and these are abilities that martials tend to not have, and this is the underpinning of the martial caster divide. And when a long rest is right around the corner, spellcasters are worried about using up their spells because they know they're going to get them back relatively quickly. And this abundance of long rests has a knock-on impact on short rests and their viewed value as a commodity. If you're getting long rests fairly regularly before eating into resources, why do you need short rests? Not to mention, in most modern pacing for TTRPGs, 1 hour and 8 hours are functionally the same, so why not just take a full long rest? All of this to say, the current rest mechanics don't serve a large majority of the kind of games that are being played with Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. The slower pace of narrative means we need to find a way to spread out the use of resources across more than just a single day. Anyway, enough complaining. You came here for a solution. So what is it? It's actually relatively simple and pretty much lifted straight out of the 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide itself, where it was a variant rest mechanic called gritty realism. I've made a couple of tweaks to remove the grittier element and just make it feel more like a slowing down of the pace of the game, but it is basically the same system. Long rests now take 72 hours. 3 full days in a safe environment where you can get good night's sleep, restudy, repair major injuries, and restudy your magical tomes. It's critical that this takes place in a safe location where you're not having to set a watch at night and everybody can get as much sleep as they need to recover. Short rests now take that previous 8-hour sleep slot. You can use this opportunity to recover short rest abilities for your warlocks, monks, and everyone else, and also roll hit die as you would to regain hit points. The one tweak I make is that when you roll a hit die, you don't actually roll it, you just gain the maximum that that die would return to you. This is to ensure that hit points and healing remain relatively in abundance to avoid that gritty nature. And lastly, we add the quick rest to the system. Quick rests take 10 minutes and represent you patching up wounds you've gained while trekking through a dungeon, where you can roll hit die in the conventional way up to a number equal to your proficiency bonus, but do not regain any short rest abilities. Now, before you go switching to this system straight whole cloth, it is worth mentioning that some spells and other abilities might be affected by this switch, but they'll be edge cases rather than the norm. A spell like Prayer of Healing loses a little bit of value as you could just take a quick rest, and Magnificent Mansion now doesn't give you a long rest, but you could just tweak those spells as a GM to ensure that they still have value. Prayer of Healing still heals a fair amount of hit points, and you can cast it during a quick rest, so you get that double healing. And for Magnificent Mansion, you could just add an effect to the spell that it does grant a long rest if someone stays in for the full 24-hour duration. Those minor teething issues aside, this alternative rest system provides more scope for rest options and allows the GM a better way to pace the game the way they want. There are quite a few benefits that this system would provide if you switch to it. Firstly, as pointed out, it helps solve the adventuring day problem, as you no longer need to cram a lot of combat encounters just to make people use up their resources every 24 hours. By reducing the regularity and opportunity for a long rest, it forces players to be more responsible with their resources and think about the way that they're using them. Especially casters who will no longer be able to nonchalantly throw around spells that circumnavigate challenges the GM has introduced. Is that charm person to get a discount on a shopkeep really going to help you in the long run, knowing you're not getting that spell slot back for 3 whole days? By removing this reliance on magic, social and exploration counters become much more interesting and balanced across the party. The social pillar and roleplay now becomes reliant on skill checks, something that every character can do to a reasonable degree. Yes, bards, sorcerers and warlocks may be more proficient with their high charisma, but a fighter and a rogue can still engage and have an influence on the scene. This change also helps the often maligned exploration pillar. As a pillar, it often got circumnavigated by spells and long rest features, making it feel sort of redundant. Spells like Detect Magic, Find the Path, and even Teleportation removed some of the challenge that came behind finding out the environment around you. Casters can still obviously choose to use their resources to overcome these obstacles. The game wants you to do that, but it is no longer just an afterthought. It is a careful consideration as to whether you need that resource down the line today, tomorrow, or the day after. Is it better to turn to the rogue and ranger who are more comfortable in this environment and let them use their skills and proficiencies, rather than a spell that you could desperately need when you come face to face with the dragon? In general, the alternative rest system is designed to make a party and the players be less reliant on magic to solve all of their problems and look to their more mundane skills and abilities. Magic hasn't been reduced in its power or influence, it's now just rarer. We're not running low magic, we just want people to be responsible with it. And this is all without saying about the benefits it confers to the GM. The ability to control the pacing on a more fine-grained scale because you have 3 different rests that you can utilize to change the timelines. You're able to exert a time pressure on the players without having to make sure everything happens in a single day to eat into their resources. And hey, players, think about how much downtime activity you can get on with during those long rests. Maybe go make some magic items in your bastion. Now, while I do think the alternative rest system will benefit most 5th edition tables, I don't think it's suitable for every story. If your table is all about the simple hack and slash dungeon crawl fighting monsters where you just turn up, roll dice and have some fun, do not use this system. Your narrative is tight and not running over a prolonged time, and in fact you're playing the game much closer to what it was designed for back in 2014. Similarly, if you're just a casual table who meets up once a month for some wacky adventures and aren't really keeping track of a central narrative, again, you don't need this system. It allows everyone to be more whimsical and wasteful with their features and just have a good time without overthinking every move that they're going to do. It just allows you to enjoy time at the table with your friends and not stress about mechanics too much. But beyond those two, I do think the alternative rest system is more suited for where modern storytelling has gone with Dungeons & Dragons, and will in fact encourage a greater level of party synergy in the long term. In all honesty, if I had had this realization 2 years ago, I probably would have set Unrolled Stories upon this method because we are running a much slower pace of narrative. but it's not a system that you should be introducing mid-campaign. It is definitely something you should be discussing in a session 0 with all of your players. Anyway, that is my proposal on alternative rest systems. Take it or leave it, but this is the hill I'm most prepared to die on when it comes to homebrew for 5th edition. But what do you think? What do you think of the alternative rest system? Will it solve the Marshal-Caster divide? Do you think it helps the kind of narrative storytelling you are trying to do at your table? Or do you have a different kind of rest mechanic that you use at your table? Let me know in the comments below. Share your thoughts, share your systems. I'll be curious to see what else is out there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like. It helps with the all-powerful algorithm. And if you enjoy this kind of content, please hit subscribe. You can go check out all the other videos on the channel. And don't forget to hit the bell notification icon to make sure you never miss a video when I upload one. With all of that out of the way, I think that's everything I had to say on rest mechanics. So, until we do this again, you keep an eye out for dragons. I'm going to go see whether my accent has woken up. And remember to keep telling stories.